Hello and welcome to everyone back to the Called Podcast. This is episode 7, and today I have my supervisor, my boss, and the chaplain here on campus. Andrea, would you like to, introduce yourself a little bit more to the audience?
Sure, yeah. Chaplain Andrea, or you can just call me Andrea, either way. I just got here last July, so I'm kind of new to campus. I'm getting to know people here, but I'm enjoying it a lot, and I'm excited about what I do here. I get to work with amazing students such as Jonathan, and then also just, student missions is something that's very close to my heart. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I went as an SM before as well several times, so I know that world as well from the inside.
exactly. Yeah, I was about to say your experience, before coming. I know that you worked for the NAD as well. Would you like kind of like elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I started out at Southern, but I was an SM after my sophomore year. I went to New Zealand as a youth worker, um, came back and graduated and ended up working in the student missions office there for about 3 years. And then I ended up going to um, and finished the year there. It was like in January or so, teaching second grade. Then I came back and I worked as task force in California at Camp Wawona for the year-round staff. Then I went back to YAP as the registrar for the school year. Then I came back and I did some job hunting because by this point it's my late 30s. And I mean, not my late 30s, my late 20s. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure out something. Anyways, that was the time where I got hired at the NAD to work in the Office of Volunteer Ministries. And that's just an office that helps basically facilitate the process for student missionaries to go and other volunteers to go serve around the world. So I did that for about 7 years. And yeah, now I'm here.
Yeah,
So a
no,
little bit of variety.
that's awesome. Yeah, you definitely have had a taste of everything. It sounds like the task force position, being in YAP, and also being in the office and being a registrar and stuff like that. So that is awesome. So yeah, this episode is going to be a little bit different from the other ones, just for the everyone watching. This is going to be more informative about the application process and just kind of what all goes into it. So that's why I asked Chaplain Andrew to be with us today, and I know she's going to have a lot of good insights. So we'll just kind of get right into it. The first question is, why should anyone SM, and if there's a reason why shouldn't, or why you shouldn't?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the best answer to that question does not come from me. That comes from talking to your return student missionaries. They will each give you their answer on why it's important. I think for me, there's a couple reasons. One, um, as you're living out your faith, like when you're breathing, you're like inhaling and you're exhaling. And a lot of times on campus, especially on an Adventist campus, you are perpetually bringing information in, religious information, spiritual experiences, and they're all really good things. But in order to really grow and live, you got to exhale. And
Right.
I feel like that exhale is letting that come out in your life in service. And whether that's like in your everyday opportunities to be nice to people, working with the CHE. And I think this is a huge opportunity as well, just to full time get that experience of living a life of service. And it's a really unique opportunity that we have. But I think also it's good for just opening your mind to what the world is like, the ways that people think differently in different parts of the world, and
Hmm.
realizing like that's okay. Like
Yeah.
that's actually a good thing. They
Yeah.
think differently and you think differently, and that can create something beautiful. So those are, I guess, just some things that come to mind right now on benefits of it. Of course, it helps you grow up a lot. If you if you really want to test this too, you can uh, get to know someone before they go out as a student missionary, and then get to know them afterward, and you will see they're transformed many
Yeah.
times
For sure.
spiritually, but in so many ways as leaders on campus as well. Most of our leaders in the church, I haven't done an official study on this, but I would guess like probably a good 70% or so of our leaders, whether at any level, have been a student missionary, or I'll add in camp as well. Then we'd probably even go higher. have worked at camp, but basically that idea of service being a huge part of what you do. As far as like, if it's not for you, and I think that's something good to address. I think the main thing is you have to have a willing spirit. So if you don't have a willing spirit, not for you.
Yeah.
If you're just like, if you do not want to be moved from where you are, if you do not want to grow, if you want to stay comfortable, it's not for you, because you will not be comfortable and you will be growing. I would say also you need to ask some questions or pray a little bit more if your family is not on board. And I would say especially right now with COVID, I mean, there's some serious things to think about, and you need to count that cost. That is really important. So, you know, we love people who come in and are super enthusiastic and like ready to get out the door, but we also want people who have thoughtfully considered and maybe struggled through it a little bit. But yeah, if you're willing and you're ready to grow and be out of your comfort zone, it's for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely think, like you were saying, that with the different cultures and stuff that you'll experience, it'll force you to grow. And depending on your roles, I know a lot of the people going out aren't necessarily having any background in teaching or whatever the position is. And so it kind of forces you to take more responsibilities than you are usually comfortable with. And that's another thing about growing out of your comfort zone. And so it's definitely one thing to think about. Would you say, is there any reason why, like, do you think there are any bad reasons for someone not to go?
For someone not to go, any bad reasons, I would just say, like, if you think that you're not good enough, if you think that maybe you're not spiritual enough, or like, yeah, maybe you think you're too shy or too introverted. I was definitely I am an introvert, and you can find a lot of those represented. Yeah, or maybe even if you just feel like, I'm scared at this moment. Like, I don't know if there's a lot that I'm giving up, maybe
Right.
my friends or things like that. And I would just say, be willing to, when you're making this evaluation of this decision, many times you're able to see the things that you would be giving up, you know, maybe access to your family or your friends or your hot shower or whatever it is,
Right.
your good food, you know, you can see that. What you cannot always see is what you will be gaining. And that's any decision with following Christ. You're always going to be gaining more. And it may not be, I mean, yeah, you're still going to be getting your cold shower maybe. But there's so much more richness that comes that you're not able to see. So don't make the decision just based on what you're giving up. Make sure that you're considering all the unknowns that you will be gaining.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's definitely something for each and every individual that has even the smallest tug at their heart to go SM. Whether, like you were saying, whether you think you're more introverted than you are extroverted, it really doesn't matter. Like, there's a lot of ways that you can do things that other people might not, even if they're extroverted and you're introverted. Maybe you will connect with someone a little bit more just because, you know, you'll have that sort of understanding with someone. So I think, you know, what you're saying is definitely something for people to consider while, you know, considering whether they even want to SM or not. And yeah, so once you kind of make that decision that you want to, what does the application process look like?
Okay. It starts with conversation, basically. And I'll just say, if you want to see a quick overview of what it looks like, you can go to our website, and I'll just give you the short link, but it's wallawalla.edu/missions. And if you go on there, you'll find the guide to service, and it gives a good summary of everything. But basically, in fact, I might be using it right now just to make sure that I have it on track. But basically, it does start with conversation. You'll stop by the office, or you can call, make an appointment. We have an applications team, and they just kind of talk you through what it's going to look like, ask you some questions. They'll share a little bit about their experience, and it gives you a good foundation. You don't have to know where you want to go at the beginning. Some people think like they need to have it figured out before they come in. Even if you don't know if you want to go, this is a perfect opportunity to just come in and have a conversation. But from there, whenever you decide you want to go, they'll walk you through the application process, which is basically, there's some forms to fill out. There's an online application. There's a background check screening, and a little bit of training that goes with that. And then there is either you'll take a class on campus, the cross-cultural ministry, or there's an online version that you can take if you missed that class. So we got you covered either way. At that point, once you have kind of all the paperwork done and the application part done, we take your name and your file to a screening committee, which is made up of just a few kind of key people on campus that work with, basically student life, academic services, that kind of thing. And they, approve. Very rare that they don't, but they pretty much approve. I did miss one step. There is also a screening interview with myself, and that's just kind of going through a little more conversation, helping me to get to know you. Once that's done, you go to the screening committee. And then from there is where we talk a little bit more closely about, like, where do you want to go? We start settling those questions and having more conversation. And then we get your application sent to whichever calling organization, mission organization that you're interested in, whether that's domestic or international. And we go through that process from there. Sometimes people are real quick and they just they know exactly where they want to go. They send their application there and it's done. Like, they're accepted and bam, they're voted through, everything's done.
Right.
Then they can start the fundraising. Sometimes but this is the part that sometimes can take a little bit longer because things fall through or different things happen. But basically, once that's pretty much settled, we work with, we have a student missions finance team, and they kind of walk you through the fundraising part of it. They help you with creating a letter, giving you some donation envelopes, giving you some other tips. And then, that's kind of your life for a little while, is fundraising, telling all your friends and family. And from there, it's basically down to, we help you with the visa, with getting a ticket, if needed, getting a living allowance, because certain locations need that. And then, we help you make sure that you get out the door, get there safely. One thing that I didn't mention that maybe will come up a little bit later, but this year is a little bit different because we are going to have some different requirements. There's probably going to be some different waivers related to COVID. And it looks like we're probably going to be requiring the vaccine for those serving internationally. So outside the U.S., that will be a requirement. So some of those will come into play around that time too. So that's kind of the overview. I don't know if I hit everything, but
no, for sure. And I mean, that may or may not seem, like a long, daunting process to a lot of people listening. But honestly, I mean, out of personal experience, and I'm sure you could attest to this as well, being past SM as well. Honestly, the process is a lot more simple than what it sounds like. I feel like, especially the office, especially here on Walla Walla University, the office does a really good job of kind of simplifying the process for you and just making sure that they take as much of the process as they can. And you just kind of have to go through the motions of, filling out the forms and just kind of going through the different steps that they have for you. But it's definitely a lot, or at least in my experience, it was a lot easier than what it sounds like. I don't know if you can attest to that as well.
Absolutely. I think, like any journey, when you're looking at the whole thing at the beginning, it's really intimidating. But when you're just taking it one step at a time and you have someone there to hold your hand through the entire process, it's not nearly as intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you guys, the office has been helping people do it for years, so they've kind of brought that to a science almost, making it as efficient and simple for everyone as possible. But so you were talking about a little bit of the fundraising. Could we kind of get into that and what that looks like for SMs while they're a little bit further into their process?
Sure. Yeah. So the and this is something that I'm still kind of learning as well, but I'll tell you what I do know. There's kind of a range for what your fundraising goal is. And first of all, you're fundraising basically for a program, and that program helps pay for us to assist you all the way through and to support you while you're there and to welcome you home and make sure that you're okay when you come home. So you're fundraising for the program. So that when donations come in, we can't really return those. So just recognize that. But it is also covering typically your airline ticket. It's covering insurance, covering living allowances in some situations. So it is covering a lot. The range is domestic calls are $500. That's basically your application fee. That's it for domestic. Then your next level is kind of your typical Adventist volunteer service call, where they're not paying for your ticket, but they're paying for, where you're going to stay and your living allowance, things like that. That's about $3,700 that you're raising. And then it goes up to about $5,500 or so for calls that do not provide like a living allowance for you every month. You're having to raise that on top of it. So the range is about $3,700 to about $5,500 that you're fundraising. And then I guess, do you want to know kind of like how people usually do that, or?
Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So like I say, the SM finance team will kind of walk through, but there's a letter that's provided and it's personalized, and you can personalize it a little bit yourself as well, add a picture in there and things like that. And they just want to double check and make sure that everything, you didn't like delete sentences that's going to, make people mad at us, basically, if their funds don't get returned or something. Like, we want to be really clear about certain things. But then they kind of recommend that you send out about 50 letters. Your goal, like if you can get to 100 letters, that's great. The more you can send out, the more chances of donations coming in, which is pretty logical. These letters have like a return envelope, but it also has information for how people can donate online. So that basically all comes to our office. We record it on a spreadsheet that is shared with the student missionary, and then they have access to see which donations have come in, and they can write thank you notes, things like that. And of course, the goal is to get your money in before you leave. That's obviously the goal, a couple weeks before at least, so that we're purchasing your ticket and things like that. But I do want to just make this clear. If money is a struggle for you, and just talking about this is like, and this is why I'm not going.
Yeah.
I want to say to you, we can make it happen. So don't let that be the reason that you're not going. We have donors for you. So we want to make sure that everyone is doing their best. So still go ahead and send out those letters, go through the process. But if it's just not working out, we do have also access to a couple of other scholarships that one that the NAD provides, and some that other people here at Walla Walla have provided. So yeah, we can make it happen, basically.
Yeah, I know that's one thing that the office emphasized a lot when I was in my application process. I, was a little bit scared with the financial need of fundraising the money, and if I didn't find enough donors, would I have to pay out of pocket, stuff like that. And I know that the office does a really good job of letting you know that, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, if there's never been a reason for not sending someone based off of just money itself. Money is never an issue for the office, I feel like they definitely will get, like, if you're doing your part, they'll do their part as well to back you up. And so that's definitely one thing that I know for people that are a little bit more financially conscious, or, it's a little bit more of a struggle, don't worry about that as far as your application goes and whether that should be the reason to go or not to go.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and then for the fundraising process, that you were talking about how some of the money goes to your stipends, and your cost of living is like in different places. And that's why probably the reason why some of these locations are either more expensive or cheaper to go to. But could we talk about stipends and how that kind of looks like for the different locations?
Sure. So most of your opportunities that are listed through Adventist Volunteer Service, like basically all the islands and Marshall Islands, Majuro, Ebi, and Micronesia, the same. They typically will provide a living allowance for you. They provide your accommodations, like where you're staying, and they'll give you maybe like a couple $100 a month. It's literally just enough for you to buy food.
Yeah.
Typically. I do know people who were real thrifty though, and they would save that money up, and that would be their spring break money or whatever. But it just depends on how frugal you want to be and what kinds of foods you like must have, because your box of cereal at home is going to be $2, and maybe there it's like $12. So how much do you really want it? But then there are also locations, and also I would just say that living allowance, it varies a lot depending on where you serve. Mm-hmm. But again, the principle is it's supposed to be covering your living expenses. It's not payment, it's to help you serve.
Survive, yeah.
If it's not enough though, like let us know if you're just feeling like, man, this is really bad, because we do need to pass that information on to people. But then there's other locations. Some of them are on ABS, but some of them are our independent calls, and they are places where they just can't afford to give anything. So they'll pay for your accommodations there, but otherwise, it's up to you to provide not only your living allowance, but also the cost for insurance. The cost for insurance is probably around 300-ish a year. Your living allowance, again, they're going to go ahead and budget it for you, like monthly. But then many times that is something that our office actually is responsible for, is getting those funds to you. So it depends on the location. But typically it's going to come in kind of a lump sum. So sometimes it's like half of your time there, we'll send you like a giant sum of money.
Right.
Hopefully you can be responsible with it and not spend it all in that first month. And we try to talk through those things too, because there are some people who are like, I can't do that very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, depending on the situation in the country, there's certain countries too where people can withdraw money from like their card or whatever. And other countries you can't, you just have to take it with you. So we kind of work that out as needed, but that's something that our office would work with you on, basically.
Yeah, for sure. And I know a lot of locations, or not a lot, but some locations still use like the US dollar. And so like if your parents want to send you money too, that usually works. I know my parents did every now and then. But yeah, again, like the stipend, I feel like usually does, like you said, it covers what you need. I know I don't cook, or I didn't cook at all when I was on the islands. And
Wow.
I usually just, I would, I mean, it was funny. Like Jeff and I remember I went with Jeff and Andrew Yamada. I don't know if any of the listeners know who those are, but Andrew was really good at, buying like basic stuff like groceries and just like maximizing his stipend as much as possible. Whereas Jeff and I would go out to eat almost every night. And when I say go out to eat, I don't mean like go to a restaurant. I mean go to like a little store and buy like ramen or something because it's like super cheap, and then like maybe like a hard boiled egg, throw that in there. Buy a bag of chips for like 50 cents, and that was basically how we would have dinner almost every night, which wasn't the healthiest, but it did the job, because we didn't want to cook. But yeah, there's definitely ways, with the stipend. I think they're pretty well. I don't even know how to put this, but basically like it covers what you need no matter where you go, and I don't think that that changes. I've talked to a lot of SMs from different places, and they've kind of said the same thing, that their stipend was either just enough or plenty to get them through the year. But yeah, I mean, again, talking kind of cost of living and like locations and stuff. Are there locations that are more strenuous, I guess, than others as far as your living situations and stuff like that on your call?
Yeah, there are. One more quick thing on that. On the living allowance. I would just say I've also seen where if there's groups of SMs, if you trust each other, you have to really have good communication. But they'll pool their resources and they'll all go grocery shopping and like cook together and whatever. And so that works out great for some, but you need to make sure you're all on the same page.
Right.
But it could save you some money. Yes, as far as like the kinds of places where people go, I know sometimes people have, maybe not here, but I know in other people that I've talked to have had this mindset of like, if I'm an SM, I'm basically in a grass hut, no communication, no internet, like nothing. There's snakes outside my door.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that everywhere. If you want that kind of experience, we could probably find that for you. But that's actually not the typical SM experience. It's really pretty diverse. There's cities where people will live. So, there's actually a lot of stories of SMs going out to eat every night, like what you're talking about a little bit, especially like in Thailand or Bangkok, like that. So there's more urban settings where you're going to live in an apartment that's, it's going to be different, but you're not roughing it too much.
Right.
Then there's kind of your midway. I would say islands probably represent that pretty well because, you're going to have a few more cockroaches and maybe a rat or two you'll have to worry about or get somebody else to worry about. But typically, and it's not like home, you're going to have your Wi-Fi, you're going to have your ways to communicate, but it's different. You might still have your cold showers, and it's it doesn't feel the most comfortable. You may not have air conditioning, things like that. So you just have to kind of be aware what your level of tolerance is. And then of course you do have like the really roughing it. And then of course I'm not even including really domestic. You probably know what you're dealing with if you're going to go to the States. But even then, I think any SM, wherever they're going, you're going to be flexible. But you do kind of want to know what your standard is. And it's okay to have a standard. If you know, like, I hate the heat, it drives me nuts, don't go to a place without air conditioning. You're going to be miserable. And there's other places that you can go. Or if you think like, I just cannot handle massive bugs and whatever, like, go to Denmark. Like we have a variety for a reason. And I think God crafts us in a certain way to lead us to the best fit for us. And I know for my first experience with New Zealand, I just really wanted to go either Australia or New Zealand. And I kept thinking, like, God's going to make me go to Korea. And I don't know why in my mind it was Korea, bless their hearts. Like, I'd love to go there now. But I was just like, I wouldn't be able to eat any food there. Like, I just couldn't do it. And I just realized through that experience that, like, no, God put New Zealand or Australia on my heart because that was where he knew I would fit. So sometimes he stretches you outside of that, but typically it's okay to have your preferences.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know also to kind of piggyback off of that, even if you aren't the most, like you were saying, like, oh, I don't like bugs or I don't want to be in the heat where I don't have air conditioning. At the same time, if you have a pull towards that location, don't let that stop you. I know the adjustment is a lot, or at least it was for me, it was a lot less than I expected it to be. I went to Madro and it was very, very hot. And the first couple nights, I would stay up all night because I couldn't go to bed because we didn't have air conditioning. I was just like in a pool of my own sweat, basically sleeping in my bed. But after like a week, I was fine and I was able to sleep and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely one thing to take note of when you're choosing a location, that you do adjust and, it may not be as bad as you may have expected it to be. So that's one thing to kind of just keep in mind. But yeah, speaking a little bit more about, the certain type of people to go to different locations, what kind of person will thrive as an SM? And that's kind of a general statement and for specific locations.
Sure, yeah. I think in the general sense, the kind of SM that will thrive is kind of what we've talked about before, like someone who is willing to grow, someone who is adaptable, or at least willing to try to be adaptable. I think someone who is curious about people, and it's not just looking at like, what job do I need to get done, check the box, but really interested in connecting with people's hearts, with their stories. Those always do really well. You can really drop them anywhere in the world, and if you're looking for connections with people, you're going to be okay. And you're not always going to know how to do that, but you'll learn because you care about the people.
Right.
And I think those who do well are ones who have a strong relationship with Jesus, but I would also say those who are willing to, who are open to God's work in their life. If you're not, I would just say there might be other opportunities for you, and I think I can still reach you wherever you are. But I do think it's important to have an open heart and an open mind to whatever God wants to do for you, no matter where you feel like you are on the level. We all sometimes have our days of whatever we feel like. But I think if you're open to that, you can do really well, and you can see God working in really amazing ways. And I think also just maybe a tolerance for things being different, and to expect the unexpected all the time, and that people are going to ask you things. I think it can be helpful to be able to know what your boundaries are, and yet be also, and this is, I guess, back to adaptability, but you want to know, kind of who you are and what you have to bring to the setting. But if things are, you're getting exhausted and you're pushing past things, if you can feel comfortable with pursuing a conversation about that. That'll be helpful. Doesn't say that you won't be okay if you don't, but you'll do really well if you can kind of figure out where those are. You'll last a little longer.
Right.
Yeah, and as far as specific locations, I'll try to do just a short, I don't
Yes,
think
I know
about
there's a lot of locations. Yeah.
but every location. I would just say maybe think about what's more important to you as far as like, is it a location in the world and you're willing to do pretty much anything in that location of the world? Is it more, I just want to be a teacher, or I just want to do medical work? Doesn't matter where it is. Or sometimes it's kind of a combination of both. But really, eventually you'll find there's certain things about different countries that are maybe more or less challenging depending on who you are, and you can adjust to differently. But typically it's what you're doing and who you're with that is going to be the easiest to adapt to. So if you're someone who's like hardcore extrovert, don't pick a call by yourself, whoever that might be. And, there might not be any other SMs there, but if like, there's a good team of people there who speak English, or there's expats there, or another SM from another school is going there, you're just going to want to make sure. And in fact, I would say your hardcore extroverts, just go to the islands. Like, you'll have people around you. You can do some team building. It'll be great. But I will say to the introverts, don't feel like you can't go to the islands, because I know sometimes I used to have that perception that like it was just for the, I don't know, like the groupies who went to the islands. But that's not true. There is truly a place for everybody at all of those locations. If you are a little bit more introverted and you feel like, hey, I can go by myself, there are some positions where you're still going to be working with local people. You may just not have like your buddy right next to you, and that's going to be hard. I don't always recommend that to everybody, partly because I went through that and it's not easy. I'll just say that. But there's opportunities there, and if you feel like, I'm pretty good with reaching out and building connections with local people, then obviously there's plenty of places for that. Like I said, I went to New Zealand, Australia. Those aren't exactly open right now, but a lot of times those youth worker positions, things like that. I would also just do a little plug for domestic missions here and say, I know we often think that if we really want to change our mindset, or we really want to like experience the world, we do have to go outside the U.S. And I think there is for sure a place for that, and we want to support that. But I'll say there's a lot of opportunity for cross-cultural experience here in the U.S. We have at Chinle, Arizona, we have two girls down there right now, and I mean, they're ministering to the Navajo Nation, which matters so much if you think about everything. And I guess I won't even go there because I don't know a whole lot, but like just any kind of work with the Native population, I think is gold. And I just think it's overlooked, unfortunately, a lot. But we also have refugees here in our country, and so much opportunity to get to know. Right now we have a call in Chattanooga area with Syrian refugees, a lot of Muslim refugees. So, and even those in academy settings as like deans and stuff, people are like, that doesn't really count. Like, it honestly really does count. You have a different kind of cross-cultural experience there as far as like a different generation and things like that. But I would just say, no matter where you go, you will be changed, even if you don't go to the US, even if it doesn't work out for you, or if you just literally wanted to go,
right
there. I think that needs to be said. So I don't know if I answered, if I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, I think you got it. I think so basically like the highlights of kind of choosing a location is based off of the role itself. So what do you want to be? Do you want to be a teacher, a task force dean, maintenance worker? There's so many different roles and positions you can be. Second, the location itself, whether you have, an attraction towards going to the islands, going to Europe, even staying here in the States. And then the third is like comfortability. So like, what are you willing to sacrifice for different locations? I don't know. Does that kind of sound like a good overview? Like the three different? Yeah.
That's a good summary.
Yeah. And so, and then we were talking about, people that these personalities will thrive. But say you don't thrive and say that you don't want to be there anymore. What does that look like? I know that, that is a realistic possibility. So what does that kind of look like as far as the process for coming back home? Do you even have the opportunity to come back home? Stuff like that.
Very good question. And I think there's a good spectrum of answers on that. And that starts before you go. I know many people, commitment is hard no matter what. And especially, when you're crossing the ocean or whatever, it's hard. So first of all, even as you're taking these steps, for those who are applying, it's okay to apply and still not be 100% in. Like, even when you're on that plane, sometimes you're like, or you're getting ready to board that plane and you're like, I don't know. Like, but I will just say, if there's any time, even while you're applying, that you feel like you need to pull the plug, stuff changes or whatever, like, it's okay. Just let us know. Once you're over there, it is something that takes a little more thought and a little more processing. It doesn't mean for sure, like, the things that for sure we're going to be like, it's time for you to come home, is like pandemic happening, as we know. And we need to be real about that sometimes it's not even necessarily my call. Sometimes it's literally the university saying, like, you have to get these guys out of there.
Right.
And so we do, and that's really tough. So be prepared for that. If we can, and you want to say, we want to help you with that. But if not, like, that'll get you out. And typically too, like, really serious illnesses or injuries, or maybe the death of someone that you love a lot back home and you need to get back for a funeral. This is also benefits of being part of the program, because our office is here to help facilitate all of that travel. We can help you book a ticket. We're paying for it out of our budget because you fundraise. We're not asking you to fundraise anything extra to cover those things. And we have insurance also that covers a lot of these things. So we'll work with you again, kind of on an individual basis. But we also, if we can, we like to try to keep somebody in the loop who's on your location. So, for example, not necessarily a good idea to be like, I've just had a terrible day. Tomorrow, I'm booking my flight. I'm going home.
Yeah.
Or even like calling me up and being like, book my flight. I'm coming home. Like, and you're not telling anybody. You may need to wait it out for a couple of days or a week and just see, because, you want to kind of give a chance to the community to see if there's something that needs to be fixed. We don't want you to suffer there either.
Right.
Most of the time. If they do, then we need to get you home. But usually they want to try to work with you, but no one's going to be forcing you. So no matter what, if you're just done, you're done, you're done. We're going to help you. But we want you to take this commitment seriously as well, and realize that if you do leave, there's costs for the people who you're leaving behind. Like, if it's a classroom of students, someone's going to have to cover that. So just think about those things and evaluate as you're praying through. But we definitely want to make everyone feel supported, whether that means helping them cross through those crisis times or getting you on a plane and getting you home.
Yeah, no, I know that that was another thing that was kind of emphasized to me during my application process. Again, like you were saying, if there's at any point where you're not feeling it, you can pull it, whenever. And then even when you're out there, like you were saying, I know one thing that I was really concerned about was my grandma, who was, getting a little bit more sick. And I was like, oh, like, what if she passes away? Like, is there an opportunity for me to come home? And I remember at the time, the office was very, very much supportive of that and saying, like, oh, if that happens, like, we got you. We'll figure something out. And so that's definitely something that I kind of wanted to emphasize to everyone listening, because I know that's one thing that kind of is overshadowed, but at the same time is very important to take note of. So I thank you for covering everything. And I feel like that's, the office does a really good job of just supporting you in general, no matter what happens to you. And I know, is there a possibility to say you're in a location and you made just, things in that certain location are just not going the right way for you, but you still want to stay in the mission field? I know that sometimes there are opportunities to go to different locations as well. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Absolutely. That's happened many times. For whatever reason, maybe someone was sick in a certain location, but they're like, hey, I'm not done yet. They came to the States and we found a domestic call for them. So that happens quite a bit. I would also say too, like, say you do come home for a funeral, but you're like, hey, I'm not done yet. We'll get you back out there too if you want to. So yeah, it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Yeah, I mean that's I feel like that's definitely something that kind of alleviates a little bit of stress. I know it did for me when I was in my process. So, um, for anyone listening, there you go. But yeah, I mean, so basically, all these things that we're talking about are about SME. And I know I've had a lot of questions from other people outside of the podcast, whether there are even opportunities for international calls now with COVID and everything going on, whether we're sending people out or if they're going to be staying domestic calls only. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I mean, it depends on which week that you ask these questions, which month. But yeah, I can tell you the latest on that. We do have all of the calls posted and updated on our, I'd say all the calls, but all the main ones that we send to typically on our website. Again, wellwell.edu/missions or /send-me. That's the actual opportunities. And yes, domestic, definitely open, no problems there. Um, and I might have to look at it real quick. I know the islands right now is where I know people we've had a lot of questions, obviously. And I just got some update about that last night. Um, Basically, Palau looks like it's pretty well open, will be an opportunity. Marshall Islands, it looks like it's going to be okay. Like these borders, if you look them up, it's like borders are shut down. Like you,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you don't know when they're
exactly.
going to open. But the Adventists are pretty well connected out there, and they do typically support the work that we're doing. So they've actually, I don't know if this is public knowledge, but what I heard was that basically they were like, if you can give us a list of names
Mm,
of your student missionaries, we'll let them in.
right.
So it's kind of things like that. Vaccinations are going to be very important for them for sure. Micronesia is a little bit slower, but it looks like they're probably going to be okay too. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Um, but anyways, if you go on that website, you'll see like they're color coded. So everything in green is like good to go. There's quite a few of them. Like Malawi actually is one. We have somebody going there. And like Zambia, Zimbabwe, we don't have anybody going there right now, but there are opportunities there. Cambodia. Then there's the struggle right now is that the State Department just moved everything to a level 4, or like 80% of
Mm,
the countries to a level 4. And typically, that's where we draw the line. They raise it to level 4 because of COVID. They kind of merged CDC's guidelines or recommendations on that. So that's a little bit of our struggle we're trying to navigate through. But I think we have some ways to deal with it too. And we're having to think creatively, and it is going to be kind of an individual process. I
hmm
would say if you don't want to deal with any drama, pick a green country. If you're willing to kind of go through a journey a little bit where it's going to be a lot of communication, you can go with the yellow. Just avoid orange and red for now.
Yeah.
If we can move those up, we will. But yeah, that's kind of the scene on that. But it definitely is possible. There's definitely openings.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that that's been something that the universities and the NAD and everyone involved has been kind of going back and forth on whether students should be, going on these international calls. And I think the best way is just to make sure to keep looking at our website and our link in bio on our Instagram that has the mission opportunities. Because, like Andrew was saying, things kind of change pretty frequently, and it has been changing throughout this year. But luckily, it seems like things are starting to open up a little bit more, which is good. And I know a lot of people have been asking about that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the last question is whether it is too late to apply as an SM.
It's not too late to apply as an SM. In fact, it's never too late, honestly. It just means we're going to have to work a little bit faster, and that's okay. I would say if you're even remotely considering it, come by in the next couple of weeks if possible, because we would love for you to go on the we have an orientation exit retreat for student missionaries, and that is May 7 and 8. And we also have a dedication vespers May 14. And so we would definitely love to have you there. But even if you miss those, even if you attend the dedication vespers and that's where suddenly you feel the call, it's okay. Come on in. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, again, I've been saying this every single episode. It is never too late to apply. Even if you want change your location, I know I did. I changed my location after the exit. what was it called? The exit.
Retreat.
Yeah, the exit retreat, exactly. I was super set on one place, and then the exit retreat happened, and I was like, oh, I don't think I want to go there anymore. And I changed like a couple weeks after. So I know that the office is definitely willing to help you with any changes, or if you're wanting to get started with the application process. And even if, depending on where you are at, as far as whether you're a senior and you're like, hey, I really want to go, I know that there's opportunities for people like that too to take the next year that they graduate to go. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
You're totally right. And I'll say too, the one thing that we can do for seniors, if they go straight away afterward, if you have student loans, we can actually provide a letter that will help you defer your student loans while you're gone. So it is good to, if you want to, come through us. And even if you don't want to go through us, we can help you find someone else who can write that letter for you too.
Right, and that's awesome. And I know another thing that when you do return after your SM thing, and we didn't really talk about this, is the scholarship. And you can kind of talk about that a little bit more if you'd like to.
Sure, I'll keep it short. But yeah, there is a scholarship thanks to many donors over the years that is available. To get the full scholarship, there's some conditions, including like the retreat and coming to the reentry retreat when you come back, things like that. If but even even if you don't go to those things, there still will be a little bit of a you'll still get a
Yeah.
scholarship. This won't be the full amount.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess with that, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Just to kind of highlight everything that we kind of talked about, specifically that it is not too late to SM or to start your application process. And there are definitely a lot of benefits to SMing, to each individual location, and just, you'll grow no matter what. And yeah, I mean, I know the office is always looking for new applicants. So I was really glad that we were able to have Andrea on today to talk about the application process, because I know that information isn't really out there as much as maybe it should be, or we would like it to be. But here is an outlet for that. And again, I appreciate you and your time, Chaplain Andrea, for coming on and talking about it. Do you have anything, final words that you'd want to say to anyone listening?
Just thank you for letting me be on here, and I am definitely praying for open doors internationally, but also open doors for people who need to go, that people will feel that call and we can make that happen for them.
Awesome. And with that, we will conclude our episode. So tune again next week for another episode. But thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day, no matter where and what time you're watching this. See you guys.